fixing the audio. So I was streaming for off and on a little bit this year, but not so much. I kind of took a break. It was one thing after the other. My health's been pretty bad, and it's been difficult to get kind of a hold of the doctors that I need. But still trying to get used to everything. But it should be better now. It's kind of like with the doctors and everything. I just figured, however I feel now is as good as it gets. So might as well keep streaming. A little bit regret not streaming this whole time, but I got into the kind of the mindset of, okay, I'm going to schedule this appointment, I'm going to see this doctor, and then, after treatment starts, then I'll start streaming, I'll feel better. But that was kind of a mistake on my part. Hindsight's 2020. If I would have known how long it would have taken, I would have started streaming earlier. But here we are. So what we have now is what I'm calling the State of the Union. And what it is it's going to be, we're going to talk about everything that's coming out for the Photations website. Thumbs United is part of Photations. Thumbs United does the live streams, the creative streams. We also do video games on Thumbs United, but we do behind the scenes editing of a lot of the photographs that end up on the Photation store. I will put a link. If you go to the store, you can see the store, and then we also have the blog. And there's 4 sister sites. So there's Thumbs United, Live to Tape, which does ASMR, which we're going to be doing tonight as well. We're going to be doing it live, and it also has its own podcast. And how that's going to work is we're going to record it live. I'm going to edit it, make the video better, and then the next week it will come out on the podcast feed. It is a podcast 2.0 podcast, so any modern day podcast app that supports podcasting 2.0, you can find it on. I did not give it to Spotify or to iTunes. They're not really good about supporting creators or podcasters. Apple's kind of just given up on it, so I don't see any use in going through the rigmarole to set up podcasting on iTunes. If you go to the website and find the link, it's plastered everywhere. You can add it to iTunes manually, and you can add it to the podcasting app manually on iTunes. But I really encourage you to go and find some podcasting 2.0 apps, and you'll be able to find the Photations Live to Tape podcast easier there. Now, the other one is Project Aerospace, which does aerial photography for Photations. And then there's, who else is there? Live to Tape. There's LCD Productions, which is just kind of everything combined together. And and Thumbs United. So I want to thank everyone for coming back to this stream. We are going to start the State of the Union, which I haven't finished saying what it was. So it's going to be, everything that's about to come out or things that already came out in the week from Photations. I will be presenting here. In this case, I'm showing things that haven't been released yet, but over the starting next week, especially next Monday, there's going to be a lot rolling out. I have a lot filmed, and it's going to be a lot more consistent from the Photations YouTube. We are sticking hard to this stream schedule, so there's going to be a lot more coming out. So let's get to the State of the Union. So the first thing is I wrote this blog post on the 11th of on November 20th, 2021, and I'm just going to read it. I wanted to show where my headspace was coming from with a lot of what I do. And so for this first State of the Union, I'm just going to read the blog post. I'm not always going to read new blog posts that I post, but I will read this one. So this blog post is presented without comment, and I'm going to talk a little bit how my art process was for Photations and by proxy Thumbs United. And so here we go. Presented without comment. For I've been presenting my art without comment for years. The hope was that it could inspire more people to create art in a form of their choice, with the belief that if more people spent more time being creative, the world would be a better place. For a long time I felt that the art alone would be enough. I wanted it to be an abstraction, an idea, a mantra. Anyone could be the master of art. I was inspired by Chef Gusteau's from Ratatouille, Anyone Can Cook, as well as Ra's al Ghul, The Training is Nothing, The Will is Everything, from Batman Begins. However, I didn't want it to come from me. It was that art that I wanted to matter, not me, the artist. In a lot of ways, I still feel this way, but I feel I've come down this road as far as it can go. I've struggled with mental health, but I've worked hard to achieve remission. I fought my way out of 2 catatonic episodes. While I did live through those experiences, I owe most of my recovery success to my family's support. I also didn't have a choice not to recover. My mother and I were caretakers for my grandmother, and our mission was to give her the best life we possibly could. Together we kept her alive and well for 6 years. A lot of the photography projects were only started for her. She always felt like a burden, and when asked if she wanted to go out, she would say no. But if I changed it a little and said, I'm going to the park to take photos, do you want to come? She would just about jump for joy at being included and getting to travel, even if it was only 20 minutes away. We were the same in this way. Over the 2 years since she passed, I've become more reclusive. I've pulled the same trick with my grandmother on myself. I would search for parks and events, and I would take my camera there. The camera wasn't going to take photos by itself, and this was how I motivated myself for a while. I couldn't leave the house for me, but stick a camera in my hand, and I'll jump out of an airplane to get the shot. In this way, photography was my therapy, in addition to traditional therapy. But I can't do that anymore. The lines from Christopher Nolan's The Dark Knight Rises was stuck in my head on a loop. Alfred telling Bruce, "You're not the Batman anymore. That time has come and gone. The world needs Bruce Wayne. Your knowledge, your resources, it doesn't need your body." And Bruce replying, "You're afraid if I go after Bane, I'll fail." And Alfred finishes with, "I'm afraid that you want to." I've been evolving the past year, and I feel ready to exist, ready to give more knowledge, more support, and more of myself. I hope this me coming into final I hope this is me coming into final form. Thank you for waiting. I'll be back soon. So that was the presented without comment, and now I have a short intro to the I'm gonna set it up. Short intro to the how-to series. Now, this how-to series is I describe the process I go through for creating the art that I do. I rely heavily on computational art, so working with computers, working with servers, and I wanted to share this kind of clever way of getting your hands on your own server. They're very inexpensive. What I'm about to show you, in total, this project will probably cost maybe 120. Once you get started, once you start getting more of these servers, it does get more inexpensive, and especially if you have a lot of computer parts lying around, it does get easier to build. So this next video I'm going to show you is going to be coming out to Photations on the YouTube channel and the store archive, but I will show it here. Here we go. So what we have here is an HP ProLiant. This is the BL, I believe it's 460C. It's a blade server. So how this is supposed to work is it's supposed to go inside an enclosure, and the enclosure will blow air into it for one thing, but it will also supply the power, which is 12 volts, to this blade. It will also connect networking and everything else. And so the reason why you have an enclosure is because you could have like 6 or 12 of these modules, which is the blade, and you could have several of them connected to the same enclosure, and so they could all connect and become kind of a bigger supercomputer. And it's kind of like a hive mind type thing. And then there are additional models that you can connect, which would just be for storage and everything. But this is one of the processing blades, and you can get them very inexpensive. This is a Gen 7, and Gen 7s are pretty old. I think they came out in like 2009, but they do come with dual sockets, so that means you can have 2 physical CPUs, as you can see here. And this one has 2 Xeon 6-core processors. So because there's 2 processors and they're each 6 cores, that means there's 12 total. And because it's Intel and it's Xeon processor, it has double the threads because of hyper-threading. So you can't get it's 12 physical cores total, but 24 kind of fake cores. So here is the only real hardware setting you have to do. There is a dip switch that you can see right now. The dip switch is in the back rear on the right side, and the only setting you have to change is the number 1 spot and the number 3. And so you flick both those switches to the on position, which is up. Normally they would all be switched down, but by turning on the 1 and the 3 switch, that tells the enclosure that it's okay to run outside. It tells the blade that it is okay to run outside of the enclosure, and that's what we're going to use for this because we have no enclosure. And so this method will actually help it boot up without the enclosure. And the reason why you might not get the enclosure is, 1, these are refurbished or end-of-life servers, so you might not have the proper enclosure, and 2, the enclosure is very expensive. And so this is an expensive way. So that's pretty much all you have to do. This HP ProLiant was about $45, and then another $20 in shipping. But like I said, it came with 2 6-core processors, and I believe it was like 48 gigs of RAM. So that's pretty good. And so what I'm going to be using it for is doing animation and video editing. I edit with Blender mostly, so it works on Mac, Linux, and Windows. And so I edit on my Windows PC, and then I've submitted to a Linux box. And now it's going to be Ubuntu server, and it renders it there. And so I can edit, I can live stream on my Windows computer while the other servers are actually rendering the work I did during the day. So that helps out a lot and allows me to do, I can do 4K, I can do 6K. The largest animation that I've successfully completed was an 8K animation with film photography. So the next thing we're going to do is we have to clip these 2 cables. As you can see, I'm going to clip them pretty close to the terminating port. I don't recommend that. I recommend you clip it as far away as you can, just so you have the extra wire. I don't know what I was thinking. I was just thinking, I guess cut. But you just cut the red and the black wire, the big fat ones, and then I'm going to show you how to connect a power supply. Now this ProLiant takes 12 volts. It can take 30 amps. You can pretty much connect a car battery up to it, and it will take that power. It has its own power regulator, which is good and bad. It's good because you can't really fry it. It's bad because if it doesn't like the power that it's getting, if it's too variable, it will shut the server down, which is a good safety feature. Now this is an Artisan power supply. I'll put a link, not a link. I'll display what it is, and it's for an IBM server. It does supply 30 amps. It does 12 volts. I believe it's like officially a 380 watt power supply. And so I'm going to show you what you need to do to set it up to supply the 12 volts. There is a jumper cable that you need to install. There's a grid of pins, and what you need to do is, and I'm going to show a photo I took of it in macro because you can't quite see it right here, but it's the top row, and then not the first pin, but you take the second pin and the third pin and you put the jumper on those two going across, and that will have the power supply give power the second you plug it in. So the second you plug the power supply in, it will be delivering the 12 volts at 30 amps to the server. So I have the two wires coming out. I just had a blue cable. I took apart an extension cord that was clipped, so I'm using the wires from that. And so the blue is actually red. It's going to be the positive, and then the black is black. So the other thing is, when you go to clip these, you're going to need a big tool. I could have used a bigger tool than this because the cabling is extremely difficult to cut through. It's very thick. It's made for high amperage power going through it. And so it's not only is it difficult to cut, but it's also difficult to solder on. So if you have a really hot soldering iron, that would be ideal. I have normal soldering iron, but then I also do stained glass sometimes, and it takes forever with a normal soldering iron to solder onto the board. I've actually had to use the stained glass soldering iron a couple of times, and that one gets extremely hot because it's to melt lead, the lead solder that goes onto stained glass to keep it in place. So I clipped that, and now I'm going to solder it on. And like I said, it's positive to red, and then black is negative. And it's going to supply the 12 volts. So now I have soldered it on, and we are going to connect the power, see if it works on the first try. So like I said, with the jumper cable where it is, the second you plug it in, it will supply the 12 volts. As you can see, the yellow-orange light turned on, which means it's getting power and it's ready to boot up. Now, a lot of times it will automatically start to boot up. It depends what the BIOS settings were last saved as. But, yeah, I'm not going to leave it on because there's no fan. Usually what I have, because I don't have the enclosure usually blows air through the blade to keep it cool. But what I do is I just put a desk fan on top of the blade, and then it blows air directly down, and that's how it stays cool. But if it overheats, it will shut down. And so then the other thing you're going to need is that cable. You're going to need this cable even if you only have one blade, because there's no output and there's no VGA or anything. You have to get this dongle, and then the dongle is nice because it will it has the VGA output, and then it has 2 USB ports and a serial connection, I believe. And so we can actually plug a mouse and keyboard into one port and then have a USB drive. It also has an SD card reader, and there is also a onboard USB port. This is USB 2.0. These are old servers. And so now I will show how to take out this hard drive caddy. And the other thing is that these hard drive caddies, they are SAS hard drives. They're not SATA. Now, you can actually stick a SATA laptop hard drive in them and it will work fine. But you cannot take a SAS hard drive and stick it into an enclosure that has SATA. I even bought an adapter once that was SAS to SATA, and it didn't work. Most motherboards that are PC consumer grade can't handle SAS unless they specifically say so, and most of them don't. Now this riser we're going to pull out, you have to pull it out kind of hard, and it is lopsided where it has that connector only on the left side, and then you just slide that out after doing the 2 screws on the side. Now this is from my old ProLiant. This is what you need if you want it to connect to the internet and have devices connected onto it. That is a USB 3 dongle with Ethernet. Normally if it was in the enclosure, it would get the data straight from the enclosure. Because it's running outside of it, you have to kind of cut a hole in it and have it dangle out the front. So what I'm doing now is, before I attach it to the chassis, I'm plugging in the USB to the onboard USB port, and then once it's in there, you kind of push down, and it's just kind of luck. You should get a port and SATA. You technically don't need the USB ports. I just got it because I'd like to connect USB hard drives occasionally. But if you want to make sure you get one kind of with a longer cable, because this one barely fits, and I had one that didn't fit. Now putting the SAS risers, it just slides in, but you have to kind of jiggle it into place, and it's very nerve-wracking because the pins are very sensitive. But once you kind of get it in place, then you have to push with a kind of great deal of force. Not great deal, but a constant amount of force. And so here's the SAS drive. It just slides in. Again, it's from my other ProLiant. So the Linux one will be able to boot right away. I just have to change some settings. And I'll show how to do that in a later video, how to change those settings to boot and make it optimal for running any OS. I have installed Windows on this, not Windows Server, but just Windows 10, and it works well. There's 1 or 2 applications that are only for Windows that I kind of need running externally, and so that's why I installed Windows on the one SAS hard drive. So there you go. You need this. You need a power supply. Eventually, I will show you how to modify a consumer power supply for a regular PC and to run off, to just supply power. And it's pretty easy to do, but that's all you need to set it up. Thanks for tuning in. Bye-bye. So that was the setup for how I render on servers. Like I said in the video, the ProLiant is very inexpensive. I believe it came out in 2009, so servers don't depreciate well, which is good if you want to get them used. And blades depreciate even faster because you usually need an enclosure, and then it's such a specific server that once they're out of market and reach end of life, nobody really wants to get them. Thank you for viewing this Thumbs United video. If you'd like to help support Thumbs United, which is a division of Photations, you can visit photationsdonation.com, where there's more information on how to support both financially or by equipment donation. You can also visit our social media websites and help support there. There's more information in the links below. Thank you for your support. Bye-bye.